Today on Rappler, a U.S. Navy ship runs aground near Tubataha Reef, damaging corals in the marine protected area. The military contradicts the NBI's finding that the Quezon shooting was an execution. And militants at a gas field in Algeria kidnapped 41 hostages, including Filipinos. Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. A U.S. Navy ship runs aground near Tubataha Reef in the Sulu Sea Thursday. Tubataha Park officials are investigating the damaged corals. Tubataha Management Office Head Angelique Songco tells Rappler the USS Guardian, quote, entered without a permit in violation of the Tubataha Reefs National Park Act of 2009. The ship may also be charged with destroying resources inside the marine protected area. Songco says the coral damage will be determined by personnel from the marine park and the ship. She says once the damage is assessed, the U.S. Navy can expect to pay 12,000 pesos per square meter of destroyed reefs. In a statement, the U.S. Pacific Fleet says the ship came from a routine port call in Subic, Zambales on Monday. Songco says the park sent its rangers Thursday morning to visit the ship but were barred by the Americans. Tubataha is a multi-awarded conservation project and one of the world's best dive sites, home to a huge variety of marine life species and pristine coral. The tension in the South China Sea or West Philippine Sea has found a new arena. Call it the map wars. Carlos Santamaria reports.
China claims virtually the whole South China Sea. Now that claim finds expression in an official map that includes about 130 islands and territories in the region. The Philippines is preparing its own map, which will include also for the first time the new official name West Philippine Sea and the 200 nautical mile Exclusive Economic Zone or EEZ. The map has already been drawn by the National Mapping and Resource Information Authority or NAMRIA as ordered by the President.
Previously, in the old maps, the exclusive economic zones are not yet indicated. But for the new maps that we are going to produce, we will now have to include the exclusive economic zones.
The map makers were not sure exactly where to put the name West Philippine Sea.
The cartographic challenge is just where to place the text West Philippine Sea, considering cartographic specifications. It's either diagonal or it's horizontal. So that's only because they instructed us that this is where the West Philippine Sea to be placed.
Once they are approved by Malacanang and the DFA, the new maps will be used in all government publications and school textbooks. The name West Philippine Sea is rejected by China.
The former name of that part of the world is South China Sea. So when we name it as such, West Philippine Sea, definitely there will be a not so good reaction on the part. So that's the biggest challenge.
The drafts are still being studied by the DFA.
It is very clear that based on the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, that we have the 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone, and that area in the West Philippine Sea is clearly part of our national territory.
Once it is approved, the government plans to register the new official map with the United Nations. Carlos Santamaria, Rappler, Manila.
The military says the incident in Atipuanan, Quezon that killed 13 people on January 6 was not an execution. Soldiers in the checkpoint say the 13 suspects fired at them, prompting them to return fire. Southern Luzon Command Chief Major General Alan Luga says he's taking their word for it. This contradicts a report by the National Bureau of Investigation ruling out a shootout. The 25 Army soldiers involved in the incident do not face administrative charges but have been confined to barracks. Luga says he will allow the soldiers to be investigated by the NBI. President Benigno Aquino on Thursday orders the military to ensure honest and clean elections in May. He also tells the soldiers, continue your frontline efforts during disasters. Speaking before soldiers at turnover ceremonies for Emmanuel Bautista, the next Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the President says it is the military's obligation to ensure the integrity of the electoral exercise in May. Aquino also says while the road to peace is set as far as the Moro Islamic Liberation Front is concerned, the military has to continue being at the forefront of rescue, relief, and rehabilitation efforts during disasters.
Nais natin mangibabaw ang boses ng bayan at hindi ito mabusalan ng armas, takot at karahasan. Pangalagaan ninyo ang karapatan ng mamamayan na malayang makapili ng kanilang mga pinuno.
Malaysian and Filipino nationals are among the hostages being held at a gas field in Algeria. Islamists tell media in Mauritania they're holding 41 hostages at the In Amenas gas field, a joint venture operation that includes British oil company BP. The kidnappers say they're retaliating against France for its intervention in Mali. On Wednesday, news channel France 24 broadcasts an excerpt of a conversation with a French hostage who says he's held along with English, Japanese, Filipino, and Malaysian nationals. U.S. State Department spokeswoman Victoria Nuland says Americans are among the hostages. U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta calls the kidnapping a terrorist attack. A spokesperson for Britain's Foreign Office says a British national is killed in the attack. Technology law expert attorney J.J. Dicini, one of 5 lawyers who took part Tuesday in the Supreme Court oral arguments on the cybercrime law, says ordinary people should care about this. He cites increasing libel penalties when done online, the use of traffic data, and the takedown clause as his primary reasons.
The worst provision is Section 19, and this is the takedown clause. And we argue that if enough complaints are with the DOJ, at some point it's going to look like the Great Firewall of China. Right. I think the problem, and the reason why there was so much focus on libel, when you talk to law enforcement authorities, so you talk to the NBI and the PNP,
right,
and what they'll tell you, what they've told me, is that 60 or 70% of their dockets, of their cases that are filed before them, are libel cases.
Why should ordinary people care about this?
I think there are a lot of people who have been victimized. I'm sure there are a lot of instances of invasion, right? Yeah. So you go check your email and you realize it's been compromised.
Yes.
So things of that nature,
hacking,
hacking,
yes.
right? So some of the more, or web defacements.
Dicini says the passage of the cybercrime law could limit the Filipinos' participation in the still evolving cyberspace.
2 things are at stake here. I think the freedom of expression, which includes, I think, the freedom of the press, and privacy. Now, when your privacy is breached, if somebody is looking over your shoulder, looking at what you're surfing, what you're reading, making conclusions about you, and maybe engaging in some sort of surveillance,
right,
there is no freedom.
Dicini adds, a lot of the provisions that are being questioned comes from the Senate. Days of heavy downpour leaves the streets of the Indonesian capital of Jakarta heavily flooded, with thousands forced to flee their homes. Weather officials say the seasonal rain could continue and flood may get worse in the next few days. Indonesia's disaster management agency says over 9,000 are forced to evacuate to shelters. Jakarta's Governor Joko Widodo has already declared a state of emergency. Boeing suffers another blow after the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration orders airlines to stop flying 787 Dreamliners until a fire risk linked to the plane's lithium batteries is resolved. This comes after Japan's 2 biggest airlines, All Nippon Airways and Japan Airlines, ground their fleets pending safety checks. On Wednesday, an ANA flight is forced into an emergency landing after cockpit instruments detect smoke, possibly coming from a faulty battery. The FAA's announcement means 30 of the world's 50 Dreamliners are now grounded. United Airlines, the world's biggest airline, is currently the only U.S. airline operating the 787 with 6 airplanes in service. The incidents dent investor confidence in Boeing, which saw its shares plunge 3.4% in New York on Wednesday. U.S. President Barack Obama demands an assault weapons ban and universal background checks for gun buyers. The move is pushed by shooting incidents in 2012, most recently the Newtown massacre. Obama signs 23 executive actions in a swift effort to check a rash of recent mass shootings. He lays out the most sweeping gun control legislation in decades and dares Congress not to defy public outrage and block his plans.
This is our first task as a society, keeping our children safe. This is how we will be judged. And we can't put this off any longer.
Prominent Republicans reject Obama's plans out of hand. Republican Senator Marco Rubio says guns are not the problem and adds criminals with evil in their hearts and mentally ill people prone to violence are. Well, let's now look at Rappler's Wrap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 3, over the past year, Islamic militants with links to Al-Qaeda carved out a post in Mali, while officials in Washington, Paris, and the African capitals struggled with how to contain them. The predominant idea seemed to be to let African troops deal with them. Last Friday, a surprise French assault after repeated calls for help turned those plans upside down and triggered a Wednesday raid in Algeria, with hostage takers saying they were retaliating for French actions in Mali. West African army chiefs met Tuesday to plan the deployment of about 3,300 troops as part of a UN-backed intervention. At number 9, her voice landed her on the Les Miserables not once, but twice, playing 2 different roles. Tony-winning singer and actress Lea Salonga is the first Asian to play street urchin Eponine and desperate mother Fantine in 2 different productions of the well-loved musical. With Tom Hooper's cinematic adaptation finally in Philippine theaters, Lea Salonga shares her thoughts on the film's performances. On Anne Hathaway's rendition of I Dreamed a Dream, Lea says, "It was perfect. I couldn't stop crying big tears." And at number 10, it was the interview to get Lance Armstrong, disgraced cyclist, set to talk about doping for the first time. The exclusive went to Oprah Winfrey, who taped the 2.5-hour interview Monday. It's set to air in 2 parts beginning Thursday. 58-year-old Winfrey dominated U.S. daytime television from 1986 to 2011. Celebrity biographer Kitty Kelly says the interview benefits Winfrey's cable and satellite channel OWN, OWN, because, quote, it's not yet part of the media mainstream. Insider reports say Armstrong admitted to taking performance-enhancing drugs in the interview. For the full top 10, visit Rappler.com's The Wrap. Every story on Rappler has a mood meter which gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click how you feel and your vote comes down to the middle of the front page, which crowdsources the mood of the day. It also shows you the top 10 stories that have gotten the most votes on their mood meter. Let's take a look today. 2 of our stories from the day, the new Philippine map to include the West Philippine Sea. You have 83% happy, 5% amused, 2% angry, 2% afraid. And let's take a look at the U.S. Navy ship, damaged coral in Tubataha, 74% angry. Contributing to the mood of the day, take a look at the red. Today, most people are angry. Well, that's Rappler's Newscast for today, Thursday, January 17th, 2013. Visit Rappler.com and watch our newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Maria Ressa. As we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today.